Welcome, everyone. It's Angelo Robles, and welcome to at Family Office. And for my members of SFO Continuity, welcome. I got to change the look around a little bit. Don't always need to wear a suit and tie or a sports jacket, so figured I'd go with a little different vibe today. Do not have a cigar handy, although a beautiful package of Davidoff Churchills just came in, but I'll save that for a little bit later. So welcome, everyone. Today, we're doing a deep dive with someone I met through a favorable introduction a couple of months ago, then met him in person in Miami, and just, wow, really incredibly impressed by his knowledge and what he's doing. And especially for those of you on the investing end, those of you in operations in the family office, and really heads of family offices and presidents, this is going to be an incredibly valuable and useful session. And really for all of you, you're also going to get some ideas about what's happening in the world of AI and technology and the impact on family offices. So I am calling this, pardon the hyper exciting title, Family Office and Investment Workflows Reimagined. AI, the 6 factors, we'll talk about that will define the future. And this is going to be incredible. We have a great guest with us today who I'll announce in a second. So investment offices, I think, are struggling with often outdated, and here's the big one, really fragmented workflows. And as AI advances rapidly, inefficiencies kind of still persist. Our special guest today is going to introduce us as well to his FactorIO. It's a framework, a revolutionary approach to breaking investment workflows, kind of into 6 core components: imagine, collect, organize, and search, extract, store, analyze, and report. He is really leading the charge in AI native platforms, and we're going to get to that and why that's important. AI native and rethinking investment office technology kind of from the ground up. And if your firm isn't adapting, it's already years behind. Again, everything that's happening now is condensing what some are saying 10 years into what normally is like 100 years. So it's coming at us real quick. So we're going to cover things like AI native systems, the 6 factors that I mentioned earlier, AI and investment offices, aggregating everything, and really kind of what I call a $3 to $5 million AI transformation. So we're in for a real treat. Our special guest today is Ken Akoundi, and his company, he's the founder and he has an incredible background, is Cordatius. Ken, how are you? It's great to see you again.
Good afternoon. Great to see you. Thank you so much for having me today. Very excited about sharing all this with you and your audience.
Yes, and to give the audience a little bit of context, Ken has an incredible background, doctor as well, PhD, really, really fluid in these topics, has worked for some incredible name brand organizations, but also has been an entrepreneur and really is more focused on the institutional market that is truly significant. And this is really the first time that he's really talking in a somewhat long form interview about the subjects we're talking about today. So I take that as a good kudos on my part for getting Ken to do so. And I think the audience is really going to like it. It may be a little technical, but you're going to get a lot of value out of it. So why don't we begin, Ken? What are the biggest inefficiencies in today's investment offices?
So let me begin by putting a little bit of framework around everything. The way I think everyone should start considering the investment office, whether it's a family office or endowment, they should consider themselves to be a little bit of like a manufacturing plant. And in that, there is a raw material that goes in and something valuable is produced on the other side. In the case of investment offices, this raw material going in is information and data. On the other side, they receive what comes out is decisions that are made usually by the CIO. And when you think in the context of an investment office, there are only a few pillars that you can play around with. The first pillar is people. And most investment offices that I have seen, they are short on staff. They're short staff in the sense that never get to hire the proper number of people. Then The second pillar that they can utilize as part of this production or manufacturing is these processes: asset allocation, portfolio construction, manager selection, et cetera, et cetera. These processes all also have an upper bound, and that upper bound is best practice. If you're abiding to best practice, there's not much you can do above and beyond that. That leaves only the third pillar, which is let's call it technology, and that is anything that can be utilized as part of its manufacturing plant to improve the decision making and the quality of the outcomes. So from that perspective, those are the three big pillars. Technology, obviously, with AI, the tidal wave of AI coming in the last 4 years, is given a lot of interesting potential and dreams and outcomes. So if you view in those three pillars that one can play around with, manipulate to get better outcomes. First one is, and the processes are let's talk about processes because that's a pillar. Asset allocation. Normally, when you talk to investment officers, the asset allocation exercise at the very top level, which may happen once a year, is relatively, let's say, not that formal. They collect research from different places. They talk to consultants. They talk to their buddies that are CIOs somewhere else, and then they come up with this: what does the new asset allocation look like? Portfolio construction, on the other hand, is a little bit more formal and disciplined. Then risk management, which is the most formal, if there is one that's digitized in the investment office. And then portfolio monitoring that comes on the back of the systems like you hear in all the investment offices, like Adapar is one of the technologies out there. And they're very formal, so they bring a lot of discipline. And then finally, like something like manager selection is another process. The problems are prevalent everywhere, right? So what has happened over the last 20 or 30 years, and we'll get into the details as we move on in this discussion, decisions have made almost process by process. An investment office needed an NAV, monthly NAV, so they went and hired themselves a service provider, was usually a custodian or a fund administrator, to make that calculation for them. About 10 years ago, we need a quantitative portfolio tool, and they went and they got something like whether it's Solovis, Caisa, or Adapar type. Mm-hmm. For manager selection, is very loosey-goosey technically, especially is very loose in the sense that they utilize an Excel sheet with 8 stages that they push each manager through the process. And it always start with an idea, but always end with, say, a manager selection document or that is produced. Each one of these things that have been digitized over the last now 30 years of time, has created problems where these systems are siloed. So the custody system that exists doesn't really talk to the quantitative portfolio system. Or if there's any data collection that takes place before the manager is selected, is a large amount of data is aggregated by the team. But once the manager is selected, okay, here you are, we're going to give you some money. There is the onboarding starts an entire new process, and all the data from a prior process, pre-selection process, is basically ignored. And every time these systems have come on, what they've created, because of these inefficiencies and these vertical and siloed systems that are in place, every time there's need to move data from one to another, they rely on the staff. Grab this data from here and bring it here so we can do this kind of analysis or that kind of analysis. And what happens is that we talk about the fact that the investment offices are short-staffed. So it's sort of a circular problem, right? You're short-staffed, but your systems aren't efficient, but you have to go rely on the short-staffed staff to be able to accommodate all the missing items. From the there are certain surveys that are published out there, which we can share if anybody's interested, where the survey was every other year of investment officers, and the one question was asked: on a weekly basis, how many times do you think to yourself, there must be a better way, no matter what you're doing? And that survey showed that about 65% of the investment officers and staff were thinking that. So the problems are there. There are a lot of inefficiencies. And I might add that we are a small industry. At the most, 500 to a million people work in this investment management universe of ours worldwide. So, but even though we do manage trillions and trillions of AUM, but still is a small market for any big technology to come, like a Google, to come and solve the problem for us. So the problems are many, and a lot of the technologies that are now we end up putting in a place they're complicated. There's manual components, they're siloed and fragmented. A lot of the vendors don't really truly understand the problems that the investment office has. They think they do and deliver a solution that they think solves the problem. So I'm going to stop there for a second. Actually, one more thing. It is funny that if you're familiar with Six Sigma, Angelo.
I was just going to get to that. GE Jack Welch. Yes.
That's correct. So 1984, engineer comes in, well, look, there must be a better way to improve the quality of this, whatever we're manufacturing. And they came up with this Six Sigma. Now I want to make sure that there's all kinds of ranking on how qualified you are. I think black belt is the highest one. I don't have a black belt, nor do I have a white belt, right? My belt is leather and it may be black, but it's not nothing to do with a Six Sigma. But the goal was essentially to reduce the number of poor decision or poor product to about 3.4 item per 1 million produced. Okay. And if you translate that, you think, how many decisions does an investment office make? And let's say they make one poor decision out of 100 decisions that are made. That is not Six Sigma anymore. It's 2,900 Sigma.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if you look at the investment office decisions, I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and of course, nobody admits to poor decisions, but it shows that we have a long way to go, bringing that 29 Sigma to an idea of Six Sigma.
Of course. No, that was excellent. And from my work as a consultant, maybe we both went some of the same practice management school. I agree, although I call it a little different. People, what you call processes, I call systems and technology. In the world of AI, now things have evolved. I'm actually moving technology to number 2. One day, that may be decades from now, one day it will be number 1, even ahead of people. But let's not scare the audience too much. Okay. We'll worry about that as the years progress. And many of you know I cover a lot of content relative to how it's going to impact families, family offices, and really more globally, which is, again, the cycle that we're going to see. What you mentioned in technology is also true, that it's very siloed. It really doesn't coordinate. It definitely doesn't communicate. But Ken, as you know better than me, the world is changing. Look at AI, really, since we've known more about it, since the release in late 2022 of ChatGPT. Look at how the world is changing. Look at the rise of AI agents, which is going to allow more AI native platforms to actually do what we said it's not now, to communicate. So that leads me into my comment that my audience has heard me mention a lot. The vast majority of family offices are built for a world that doesn't exist. I won't bore you with the geopolitical and economic end, but simply on the AI end, that's also changing the world. So I promised I would come back to AI native architecture versus pre-AI platforms. And this may get a little deep, ladies and gentlemen. Why is that actually important, Ken?
So in 30 years, I've been working with clients in this industry in one shape or another with investment offices. I distinctly view certain point in time where things shifted massively. Pre-2011, there was a series of, let's call it a great financial crisis. There were all kinds of systems. SaaS was, cloud models were coming along. And when one observation I made, and I have only 2 samples in that for now, every time a major financial crisis happens, within 2 or 3 years after the crisis, we have a number of new technologies that emerge. And that's really correlated to the fact that some technologies leave their or are forced out because of the crisis, and the technology are curious and they have knowledge and they think they understand in the investment office. They say, okay, we're going to build a new piece of software that's going to help the client for a specific task. After 2011 or 2010, if you will, there was a number of these companies that came out. The next period was 2010 to basically COVID, which also had some major shifts in work from home, in the type of time that people got back from being not traveling 2 hours a day to and from the office, and having some time to be more curious and play with our technologies. And these companies are now emerging from that exercise. But anybody who came after 2021 or after COVID or AI, they're clued in on AI. This is new. Look, I wrote my thesis on artificial intelligence and engineering, and mine was 1992. We talked about neural nets, fuzzy logic, and all that stuff. And it's sort of really cool to see all of a sudden in a span of like 5 years, everything that we dreamt of as things. In fact, when I first ran on my desktop, my simulation, I was limited to 551 simulation because of chip memory limitation I had to deal with back then. So it's very gratifying to see all of this coming out. And so one thing that your viewership can do is to, hey, is my technology that I'm looking at or playing, whatever it may be, is it pre or post 2020, 2021? Okay. And what has happened is cloud providers are, and the evolution is something along the way. Somebody comes with an idea, that idea becomes a software. And that software, if it's really important and really revolutionary, becomes a chip, because that's the fastest way to perform these the flops or operation number of millions and billions of operations. So the cloud providers are on the cutting edge of that. Their job is, because they've been so successful, such a great source of revenue for the owners of these cloud services. What they do, they're constantly thinking, how can we improve? And what we see now, since about a year and a half ago, all the big cloud providers are now releasing native AI containers, which, and we're going to talk about the nuances, what that means. But really, it means that now somebody who wants to use some AI tools, they can really draw directly into these setups at a much lower cost of reaching, but also the cost that's constantly dropping, but also easier because it's already configured. It just becomes a technologist's job to go and start playing around with this offering. Where I would say I see in conferences that I attended so far in this winter, general perception is that AI is young, that it is expensive. Everyone talks about being energy heavy and sort of knowledge constrained. There's to me, these are just excuses because it's part of an evolution. If you go to a next conference, you go to maybe the one in Palm Beach. You shouldn't do that. Let me do that one. I sit around, and can anybody look at the 2, 4, 5, 700 people in the room and decide who has the most evolved brain or the biggest brain in the audience? It's impossible, because all are within a certain standard deviation. We all have the same size brain as humans, right? So what we see in terms of evolutions that are happening, whether it's all these AI techniques being developed by all the major, whether it's Chat GPT or Claude or what have you, this is all evolutionary, including DeepSeek, right? That was a major jump in evolution of how you can configure all this stuff, whether it's hardware and software together to get results. So I think that this native AI is going to create a new crop of engineers who are going to be able to actually, without worrying about borrowing some open source code from here, we execute certain operations very efficiently, as opposed to companies that's 10 years old and their technology is not native AI, but they can still use AI, but not to its full richness, that potential that it offers if you're writing a native AI code.
I'm going to try to say this kind of nicely, and you could decipher it for me. The vast majority of platforms servicing investment workflows and in the family office world are good for a pre-AI world, for the most part, evolving, well-meaning people, smart people. But if they have a certain number of family offices already participating, family offices are slow to change. By nature, people are reluctant to change. They get comfortable. What happens when they're really not too fluid in AI and tech? They're comfortable with an existing platform. The platform may put lipstick on a pig and say they're using AI, and they are in little fragments upon an antiquated architecture, but it's not AI native. For them to now adapt and go AI native, often to redo agreements, possibly new engineers, take time, energy, money, money, money. They're going to be reluctant to do that if they're effectively kind of cash cows in what they're doing now. So, henceforth, how do I potentially understand that maybe it is time for me as an investment office to adapt? Maybe AI platforms will get a little more to AI agents and how they could effectively collaborate, make decisions, and how that's going to really, I think, be a major game changer. What I'm really talking about is inertia. Inertia from the company, and more so, inertia from the investment offices that are often slow, bureaucratic, and reluctant to change. What is going to happen to make them realize they may need to adapt?
They already are, right? You're very well said, by the way. I think that it really, this change of behavior of humans don't like to change. But let me point out that when the internet came out in the early 1990s, yeah, there were some winners, there were some losers, there were some crazy ideas that came that didn't survive. But then we finally, we settled on what we call a search engine, for instance. And when you go to a Google search engine, which is probably the most widely used search engine there is, or there was, you can go in and you type, I don't know, JP Morgan Economic Outlook 2025 PDF. It goes effectively and it finds that document very efficiently. You don't even care where the document came from because you look at the cover, it's a JP Morgan Economic 2025, and you found it, mission accomplished. The change will be subtle at first. For instance, for those who have interacted with ChatGPT, they know that it's all about prompts. In other words, you go and you actually write a context. I am, investment office officer. I am looking for better ways to improve, just help me out. So it becomes a prompt dialogue. So it's no longer you typing words in something because, well, it's smart enough because from one question to next in ChatGPT, for instance, it keeps its context. It knows that the last question you asked were all in the context of investment offices. So therefore, the next question you're asking, unless you change that context, will be about that. That behavior that is change of behavior in humans. You can ask the question same, but it doesn't do no better job than a Google search. But as you go in and you can talk about, create that context and add layers of prompts or combine prompts together into one big prompt, then you're going to get much better, more faster results from it than you typing, okay, was a JP Morgan's Outlook, okay, where does the document talk about blah, blah, or does the document talk about commodities? Does it talk about risks? All of that can be actually taken at the end. You can just summarize this whole thing in 3 paragraphs and write it for the language for a new analyst, as opposed to chief investment officer, right? So it is the potential, the change in behavior goes from one as man typing into a machine to a man talking, trying to find a way to communicate with the room with 100 top biggest experts, people in that other room. And how would you pose this question to efficiently extract the right knowledge out of them? It is a totally change of behavior that is coming. If you add in a cognitive revolution, which is after the mobile revolution, that's even more intriguing, right? So the concept of talking to your portfolio, talking to your documents is actually very attractive for a lot of investment offices.
There is no question that the capability of being a critical thinker, thinking for yourself, learning how to properly prompt. I've dabbled in some interns that were philosophy majors and people that may not even know that much about investing in family offices. Trust me, they did not. And some of it was a little chaos and problematic. I'm imperfect as a leader, but very, very interesting. There is a skill to prompting that is absolutely worth it. Uh, and it goes, I think, a little back to what Abraham Lincoln said. If you got an hour to cut down a tree, give me, and I'm going to be a little off here, but 55 minutes to sharpen my axe. And that relates to you want the best answer from varying quote unquote AIs. You have to really know how to prompt, how to follow up prompt again and again and again. It's maybe a little harder than it needs to be, and that will be adapting as things change. Talk a little bit about your FactorIO and why it's game changing for investment workflows.
Okay. As we were consulting with these endowment, foundation, pension, some family offices, we are consultants coming out. What is our job? We're not supposed to be super creative, super exciting. We know what we know. We go in there, we take the problem, we dissect it, we analyze it, we synthesize, and then we propose a future that's hopefully a better place. So, and that translates into people, process, technology. This is your spaghetti ball of the mess that is, and then and it's really from a data journey perspective, because that's the data doesn't lie. The data comes out of somewhere, enters the system, some things happen to it, and it comes out the other end as the decisions we talked about. As we were doing these exercises, we were thinking to ourselves, these are so messy, and it's a mess no matter where we go. I mean, from the outside, a lot of time it looks very shiny, right? But once you go inside and get your hands dirty, because like a simple example, in a case of, say, an endowment, they have somebody who calculates the NAV, as we discussed. That NAV goes and pulls all the documents, artifacts from whatever website, or for detaching from emails and bring them in, then puts them somewhere, and then extracts information or converts from unstructured to structured, as we say in technology parlance. Take that, extract that data, put it into a data warehouse so they can run analytics and then display it or communicate via dashboards or reports. But that same endowment office or investment office has a quantitative portfolio system that does exactly the same thing. Goes to all the website, downloads all the documents and artifacts and bring them in. Internal staff does that a third time. The third time they go on, it goes to the same websites. Yeah. So we looked at all these duplications and all these inefficiencies. I go, is there a better way to dissect or to put a framework around the investment office when it comes to technology and operations? And we came up with this because we come from a capital markets background. We talked about factor decomposition, and we came up with 6 factors. And these factors are, number one is that collect piece. You go to every website, you download all the capital calls, all the statement of investments, all the K1s or what have you. And this could be a single GP website or multi-GP website, so Interlinks or BlackRock. And then you have the emails that come in from some other, provider who has attachments. And there are some other emails that come in that in the body of the text, there's some informant content or information. So you say, okay, well, that's factor one. Collect is factor one. But when everything comes in, currently what everyone does, they put them into the shared drive. They are very, very detailed prescription on what to rename that file, what subfolder to save it in, and then so they have access to it later. That's called indexing. The third factor is when you can extract information from these saved artifacts into a structured format, and we call that extract. Factor 4 is store. Factor 5 is analyze. So the anything analytics that the type of vendors like Adapar, Solovis, Kaisa offer. And then the last one is a reporting, which is basically a communication with humans or whoever is on the receiving end. So these 6 factors effectively, as unremarkable as it sounds, it was actually a very neat way to be able to have a dialogue with the prospects and clients. Why? Because CIO would come to us and, well, I have a document management problem. After about 15, 20-minute dialogue, it would become clear that it's not really a document management as they define it, but it was a factor one, which is collect, and factor three, extract problem. So once you know exactly what problem is the essence of what the CIO is seeking to solve, what pain points they have, then you can effectively go solve that problem well. So it would just offer a better framework for understanding the problem.
And in terms of, I think it's important to get into, and it may be a little technical, but how can AI enhance data aggregation across sources from the SEC filings, emails, market news? How is this all adapting from APIs and beyond?
I'm sure you've heard and at somebody's in the past tell you, well, it's about a single source of truth, right? And it is true. The problem is that you're getting all your information data in one place and the different formats they exist. So think about, what are you're talking about in the question you have, there's some raw data that's important, news, derived data that's calculated by a portfolio tool. And then you have to connect them all into a knowledge pool that is relevant to the question you're trying to answer. So think how one's brain works. Let's say you're a CIO better example. Let's say that at the SVB Silicon Valley Bank disaster, right? It reminds us of the day Lehman, we woke up in the morning, they said Lehman is gone. I could not comprehend what that meant. But this is it's much smaller scale, Silicon Valley Bank, it was having problems. CIOs got into the office and they tried to wrap their head around it and get an understanding so whether they should worry or what's the impact on the portfolio. So they asked the analyst, which one of our managers bank with SVB? So most likely you can go to the venture capital arm of your portfolio. And then it goes, okay, go collect all the latest SVB news that's coming in. And then you guys in your portfolio, did any of your portfolio allocation had exposure to SVB? And then just as important is that there are a lot of managers that don't provide transparency. So did they have SPV allocation? What is that allocation? So if you put that question, think of all the activities that take place. It's really the beauty of something like AI is that it could pull all that information into one place on an industrial scale. And when you're interacting with your junior staff or other team members, you ask them to do things, language is very fuzzy, right? You can tell someone, because you work in the investment market, you can tell them something and that person knows that a little bit of context what to do. And until now, the system didn't have context. So for instance, the old school way of sending data, which most custodians, not fund administrators, but the custodians are still using, and are FTP, right? File transfer protocol, and the secure version, the much improved FTPS, which came out in 1985. Every investment office still brings data from A to B via Excel and CSV file. Then start hearing about 5 years ago about API, which is application programming interfaces, which is effectively a way for system to communicate without human interaction. And then we talked about prompts very briefly. That's another way, So by the way, I just saw an intriguing video, Angelo. There was an iPhone what belonged to a gentleman who had his own agentic AI, and we'll talk about that next, that was trying to plan this gentleman's wedding at a hotel. And they dial up on a computer the hotel's telephone line, and a telephone. Did you see that? The telephone answered, "Oh, I'm an AI agent for the hotel, blah blah." And I goes, "I am an AI agent for Johnny, blah blah, and I'm trying to schedule his wedding planning for this year." And then the computer says, "I hear you're an agent. Should we change to our AI communication, which is much more effective?" And from that point, this phone and the computer are talking to each other via what sounds like to me and you that old, when you used to dial in through with your modem, the chirping.
Yes, it did have that sound to it.
But you see what they're saying because it's translated into English. It's pretty scary. But so really that the prompting and all that is becoming much more integrated into our daily lives. Then the next level after that, you may probably hear about RAGs. and RAGs are basically, retrieval augmented generation. And it really came out because a lot of big AI models, they said what they call hallucinate, is trying to reduce that. And then the latest one that you may be hearing in the media is talk about agentic. And what's what you were referring to? Agentic effectively means that, think of it as a bunch of Legos, and you decide to make something. Some Legos are retrieval, some Legos are decision making, and some Legos are interpretation. You can put them and serial them together and have conditional work that shows, well, go to this website and bypass the two-factor authentication by pulling information from my chat, which is also on my screen, and pull all that together, and then give me that latest report, and then extract this. So effectively, we can create very sophisticated agentic packages that do that for you. I just added a new credit card to my iPhone. That is an example of agentic. And if I took a picture of it, the phone said, okay, great. You want to have Apple Pay? Yes, add it to that. And the system said, how would you like to receive the 6-digit code? I said, text. And I didn't even go to my SMS to look at the text, then type it in to the Apple Pay setup. It did it for me. That's a great example of agentic, that annoying type 6. I don't know, at least 3 times a day, I have to type these two-factor authentication codes in there. So this agentic the agency is actually super powerful. And now that means the whole, in my SVB example, the CIO thinking and then expressing that desire to an intern and another task to another intern, all of that can be a lot more smooth because AI can be as fuzzy as humans. We got to stop there.
You mentioned before the kind of the 6 factors that I briefly noted in my intro, and you reiterated a couple of minutes ago. Why do investment platforms fail, probably most specifically in collect and index phases of those 6?
Mm-hmm. So if you look at this evolution of technology, I'm a PhD, right? So for most exciting part of coming up with a value at risk back in the early 1990s was the concept of the mathematical model behind how you can make the statistics work and then solve the data issue and all that. And that task in every investment office, by the way, we talk to, that collect piece is the single biggest headache because it's not a real gratification. At best, you do it at 100%. Yeah, that means you find the documents you need to get and bring them in and for next steps. It is laborious, it's unsexy, it's repetitive, and like I said, there is no upside. Most of the companies that are out there really started from that cool analytics piece, and the genesis of that is clear. And one of my theses for the last 8 years was that there will be no new analytics that will be so superior to others. And I mean, look, let's go back. MPT, modern portfolio theory, Markowitz, 1952. Sharpe ratio, 1966. Value at risk was a 1994 creation. And anything else that you see is all derivatives of that. There's nothing new coming, so there is no edge in that. But most of these companies who decide, okay, you know what? We have this whole vertical of technology for private investment. We have a whole vertical of technology for liquid assets. What if we can put the TWR and IRR under one roof? And this is a massive improvement or contribution to the field. And what happened was that, great, but in order to do this analytics, we need a data warehouse. Okay, well, let's go get a data warehouse, which remember is factor 4. And then we're going to populate this data warehouse with some data. Where we're going to get data from? Well, we're going to get it from the documents that are downloaded. Okay, that's factor 3, the extract piece. Then go, well, client goes, well, listen, I don't want to do the collect. Why don't you do the collect? And they go, okay, fine. And then these vendors who try to go for all 6 factors have tried, but they just do the absolute minimum for that collect piece. That collect piece is the first domino in a chain of events in the investment office, and it starts with that. So it needs to be, it's messy. Like I said, I hate two-factor authentication. everyone is go, and then somebody saves it, this description of you need to download this document and save it with the following order, the asset class, manager name, type of document, and month and year, and put it in folder, private equity, buyout, right? So it is these shared drives are the monsters of this thing. So it is, no one has come up with the elegant solution for that. And I think a lot of it can be done, by the way, with all the discussion we had in the prior question you asked, is that agents should be able to, grab this information and bring it in, whatever it is, not just about privates.
Well, I mean, where I kind of started a little bit and you hinted at, what role will AI play in automating investment decisions over the next decade?
So the rabbit holes that would be across each one of the factors, or, vertically, or these processes we discussed, asset allocation, portfolio construction, or the roles of people in this organization, nothing will go untouched. That is for sure. And the question becomes, what needs to be touched urgently? And that really at the hands of the investment offices to help that. We talked about this change from dumb search of brute force Google search to this prompt-based searching. And another interesting observation I would make is that when you talk to my client said, and I'll be curious to see if you agree with your knowledge, we talked to chief investment officers of two similarly sized, say, pension fund. And I said, well, no, we don't really compete. We're cooperative. We're more cooperative than competitive. I don't know if you've seen every year when the endowment performances come out, somebody's putting that ranking between Harvard and, Yale and all that.
I guess there needs to be a winner.
Right. So they say that, but I would argue that no, there is competitiveness, because if you are the first 5 allocators to a new startup, you are getting a much better alpha than somebody who comes in round C or round D, right? So the overall, there is competition. And let's talk about it, right? So alpha is limited, right? We all know the alpha is limited. And when there's too many people jumping in, it disappears slowly. And it's capped and it's fickle. I don't know if that's a word we can use in the context of alpha, but a lot of it being at the right time is being at the right place and at the right time, and hearing the right information is the challenge. So as I said, no factor will go untouched. No function would be untouched. So let me talk a little bit about each factor by factor. Maybe it makes more sense, make it easier to digest. Right now, all the private data comes from we talk to investment officers who have created Google searches by their top 5 positions. So it sends an email to them, so they're alerted of something going on, right? SEC.gov, Bloomberg, the shared drive is a valuable source, or most relevant source of information, past and present, of any investment office. Nobody touches it, right? So on the collect side, I think that there will be aggregation of all these sources with all the technology and means that we have is going to make a very big difference. On the index side, think about the concept of being able, so we build this thing and all the collection comes in and now is indexed. What does that mean? Imagine if you could talk to your documents. And in a way, the ideal construction of collect, every investment office has one inbox that's called managers, I don't know, something at investmentoffice.com, where all the 9,000 guys you're not interested in, you say, oh, send your documents to that inbox, right? Nobody ever reads it.
We all have that.
So there is no reason why that shouldn't be pumped into the collect. So when you are sitting and you talking to we want to talk to your documents, well, listen, 6 years ago, 2 years ago, we allocated manager A, but the finalist was manager B. I was curious and my manager A is a little bit not doing so well. I wonder how manager B is doing. That manager B has been sending you those documents all along the way with the hope that they will get you back. This is the kind of dialogue you can have, contextual document with, and I say this, it gives me goosebumps. you can actually remember things you've never read, right? You can ask, talk to your doctors. These guys send you this stuff you don't know. Well, you want to ask them, who was the first guy to mention Tesla? So if you've been in business for 10 years and all these documents are accumulated in your inbox or in your shared drive, now you can actually go find these references, but it's a very, very elegant way. So from that perspective, I think index and being able to discuss things with it is very interesting. And this concept of I wrote a few things for in terms of talking to your document. In the simple form is that, well, can you get me my, I don't know, KKR fund, blah, blah, from December of 2024? And then the thing goes, well, it's not here because they haven't sent it. Then you can turn around and say, hey, they usually come in by the 5th business day after year end, right? And that's when, if it's, I give you an alert if it's necessary. So, you can do analysis on when does managers usually send me their fact sheet, how many days after month end. Or you can ask, or another one of my favorite was that when LIBOR went away, the whole slew of fixed income managers, they were compensated over LIBOR. And everyone just ran to all the managers they thought may be LIBOR based, try to collect the document to figure out how they're going to get paid the fees. So this concept of being able to have a qualitative dialogue with your documents is super powerful. Extract is obvious, right? It's just one thing. Just grab the stuff, convert it from unstructured to structure so we can use it. The other part that is this whole single source of truth, I think right now, most investment offices have their data sitting on somebody else's data warehouse. So if you have Adapar, it's your data sitting on the Adapar database. All that will change because people like to own their data. People like to, and the cost is going to be driven down. Analytics side, as I said, it's sophisticated, but once you have that analytics and all your derived and raw data in one place, you can have a general AI agent watching for risk you didn't know about.
Yes.
Theoretically, the system could come and say, Angelo, there is a correlation, some correlation in Ukraine in your portfolio, and that has high correlation to orange juice. And you got to look as well at button says, I don't care. Then the system turns around and says, hey, and Angelo, do you know that you also have a correlation to cocoa? And you say again, I don't care. But the system doesn't come back to talk to you about corn, but it says, by the way, it looks like you don't care about correlation between soft commodities and Ukraine. To which you may turn and says, no, that's incorrect. I care only about wheat, since it's one of the largest producers of wheat in the world, right? So that kind of always alert, always awake, always analyzing your data kind of engine behind could be very big implication overall on the after analytics comes in. And then don't get me started on reporting and dashboarding. Everybody's doing so poor. I have such a high expectations of at least something better than a donut chart inside a donut chart diagram, right? So I think that all of it will be revamped, revived based on its AI abilities.
No doubt about it. Now, some of the verbiage that I use is you're going to be able to do more with less, better, and faster. Now, it's a little scary. More with less somewhat implies we may not need as big of a staff. To underestimate that the family does care about cost while they still want effectiveness to go even up. And of course, to move faster, well, depending on how many things you break, could also mean the difference between getting into something in time, having opportunities. So this is all, but what happens when everyone has those same resources? What I'm going to tell all of you, no worries in the anything relative immediate term. Why? I said it earlier. People are set in their ways. They're a little older. The companies are reluctant to change. They're not getting pressure from the families or the investment teams. Everyone is comfortable. There's going to be some that rise above that. And then eventually there'll be catch up. You, I think, want to be someone who's on the head of the curve and wants to do better, but maybe that's just me. Related to that, boy, that does segue pretty well into AI and culture. Why is AI culture in Silicon Valley crucial for investment firms?
They are simply the pioneers. They really are. I go there once every 30, 45 days and talk to these AI folks. They eat, drink, sleep. They are different mental mode in terms of in other words, they over there they have scale, they have breadth, they have curiosity, so that allows them, gives them resources to be innovative and go deep. Okay. My general observation is that typical tech vendors in the investment office space are 2-3 years behind the true technology curve that comes out of Silicon Valley. The GPs, the smartest guys in the room in our industry, are 2 to 4 years, maybe saying 2 to 3 years behind the curve. Now, granted, there are structural issues why they can't really adapt these latest, greatest, but they're behind. The fact is that they're behind. The investment office, on the other hand, are 5 to 10 years behind. And I think I heard on one of your podcasts that a gentleman was saying, well, if the company is less than 5 years old, we won't even touch it. The fact is that today's 5 years old is not the same as 2010 5-year-old. This today, with the rapid change of AI affecting all aspects of life, including coding and programming, there are AI codes machines that write AI optimized code, which means instead of having a human writing a text and have an angled bracket misplaced and spend hours trying to figure it out, the systems do all that. They suggest changes to the code to make it more efficient. So really, timescale has shrunk. I think that any one of your audience who is not AI curious, who is not spending few minutes a day or trying to replace even Google search with ChatGPT or Claude or what have you, they're going to be a lot further behind in a year or two. It is a massive pace of change. I mean, think about it. We were at your conference at the conference in Miami, right? And the DeepSeek broke out, right? And everyone was DeepSeek, the whole dialogue. And at that conference, I didn't have anything smart to say because I had to go do my reading and research and thinking. And then the last conference was a GB technology conference. They announced the Microsoft Qubit chip. Each one of these events by themselves are seismic shifts in moving the market, in helping the market, and let people get scared or curious or motivated. There's, for every one of those, there must be about 10, and let's say that's 100. That's the impact is 100 on how it affects almost everyone who's in the market. But there's 10 events that you probably don't hear about that has an effect of 90 factor. There's 30 that a factor of 80. There's 50 that affect the market. So the change is so rapid that you only see the big ones. And from the way this works is always be the same flow. There's a group of really smart, curious innovators with resources. Then it becomes adopted. Different people come out of different industries and they try to pull that data, that knowledge to be used within their industry. And like, think of compliance. I'll use an example of a company called compliance.ai. Imagine of a financial institution that has business in 40 states as well as international, and they decide to go approach the other 10 states. There used to be lawyers go gather documents from every state, bring it in, read them, analyze them, and say, okay, this is what we needed to file Form ABC, and then go to the regulator, 1, 2, 3, and then do all the stuff. And then internally, we have to do the changes to our policies to be compliant with all these things that we're doing. Compliance.ai does it, to use your words, better, faster, and cheaper than an army of lawyers. It pulls in 2,000 sources and does all the jobs that the lawyers do. I mean, reading documents takes time by a very highly paid lawyer. I hope a lot of lawyers don't get mad at me. But in a financial institution, that's a seismic shift in the sense that somebody who knew the legal compliance in a bank decided to go and be curious and bring that AI knowledge to build this machine. That's happening in industry after industry. Medical billing, I've seen examples. They are all super exciting in terms of what a little team can create something that really affects a massive and old industry. I mean, this machine recommends what policy text you have to insert into your policies, and it tells you what website, and I'm not sure if it does fill the website, but if it's an email, it drafts the email to whom you need to send it to. These are super important, and they all come out of Silicon Valley. I think there are pockets like MIT that are pretty smart folks, and they are very innovative. But the fact that it's not just a university in Silicon Valley, it's just a whole community is imbued in this AI idea is phenomenal.
No, it's amazing. And again, what I said earlier with a little twist on words, now your family office is 99% sure likely built for a pre-AI world. Are you going to be okay in the short term? Maybe. Like, I don't know, but are you going to be optimized? Is it a wise move for your career? What do you think the rising generation in the family is going to think about this, that wants you to be more tech savvy, that is aware of all these things from deep seek to quantum? Trust me, I don't care what their education is. It could be narrow. They're more native to these things. Oh, I'm probably okay. You might be, but isn't that what Rome thought? Isn't that what the leaders leading into Napoleon and the French Revolution thought? What the Russian Revolution, what led to that? You don't know. The world is incredibly volatile. It could change very quickly. You could go from being on top of the world to not incredibly quick, to not be abreast of these issues, to do the research to form a thesis, and then maybe decline for now. That's okay, but at least you put in the work. I know we kept on nibbling a little bit around AI agents, and we would probably, for now in this discussion, maybe a little bit more context. How do you see AI agents evolving within investment management?
Specifically for investment offices or investment management in general?
More so in general.
Okay. I think in an analogy I use in terms of Lego pieces, I think we are still building the Lego pieces. And some of these, I mean, look, you talked about, the evolution of thoughts and philosophies. I always fall back on the evolution of manufacturing. Okay. Think of 1901 Model T was mass produced. Okay. Before that, there was all horse and buggies, right? And New York City, for instance. And that's why, I don't know if many people know, that a lot of the townhouses and residential buildings have a 6 or 7 go up to the front door, is because there was such a high level of horse manure on the streets that they all would be exhausted. So they would have that. So then the first Model T comes in, the first taxis show up, and everyone is like, so you don't have to be the first guy who bought that first Model T. Okay. You don't have to be the first person who bought the iPhone 1. Okay, I think that's always a test. We ask people if they use an iPhone, which iPhone did they jump in at what level? But and then fast forward the manufacturing and look at Tesla, the gigafactory they're talking about, where literally they have achieved the Six Sigma. They have gone together and they are using everything that comes in. And now they even think that the impact on well-known, automated manufacturing businesses will be huge. I mean, I don't know if you heard this, but I was listening to an interview with Benioff, Salesforce.
Yeah, of course.
And he said that in 2025, they will not hire a single new engineer.
Yep.
And these guys traditionally are to a 10 to 20,000 engineer hire, right? So how the AI agents are going to come in, it will be about how the conversion of people from shifting from, there's a new sandbox here. We're not typing words in a Google search. We're having a dialogue with 100 people through an intern or some sort of device. You have to identify what those Lego pieces are. How many greens, how many reds, how many decision making, how many conditional, how many data gathering. All these are being defined. And once they're defined, you need to start thinking about how to put it together. And really what agentic to me is about figuring out how do you take this people process and, or in your case, people technology process and put it together to be replacing the painful parts of the job away. I don't think that the investment offices should have a fear of, or people should have a fear of, losing their jobs. And it's because one thing that all of this that I read what 2-3 hours a day on this AI stuff to keep up, is that there are certain things they cannot do. Judgment still not there. The fact that you always need somebody to blame if something goes wrong, so the consultants don't go away, or the custodians don't go away. But our industry is so grossly understaffed. I think we have some ways to go. The people I do worry about as part of the result of this, I'm digressing a little bit, is that all those who are graduating from college now and for the next 3 or 4 years, I think that they're going to have a tough time, because I think that the guys who used to go work, and some places still hire massively a human, but I think that in terms of impact of this agents affecting investment office, we said it. I could go on for hours. I don't think enough time to do this, but no part of anyone's job will go untouched. And I highly encourage everyone who's in the industry, be deeply AI curious.
I completely agree. I mean, me being a little bit more of a negative Nelly, the vast majority of people I know, I talk to thousands of family offices. I'm not going to say they don't care. They're comfortable. They're set in their ways. Everything is fine. Let's not rock the boat. I'm going to be out of here in 3 to 5 years. Some of it relates to a principal and agent problem. But most people, again, they just don't change. I agree with you in the short term. In the longer term, I think they absolutely better be afraid. They're effectively going to be replaced. They'll be initially replaced by people that evolve to know how to use these technologies. That's going to keep you safe for probably maybe even the next 10 years, which will be enough for most of you. After that, well, it's going to get very interesting, and it may solve a lot of
and look, problems. The signs are there, right? Because you're right. Just think about it. Like, I have an iPhone and I use Siri all the time. Most of the investment officers I talk to, the investment officers all have some sort of a cognitive interface with their phone. They're all modern phones, right? But in the investment office, none of their technology is mobile. Okay, it's all desktop, and because they're not mobile, a lot of them don't have that cognitive interface to be able to talk to the way you talk to your phone to ask for an address, or put your phone on a silent, for instance, right? So it is remarkable that this resistance to change is there. But there is no, and I think it was another one of your podcasts I was listening when the gentleman was saying that the younger crew is all tech open, and the older generation is the one that's a little bit dragging their feet and not as curious. Guess what? We're all getting a day older every day, right? Right, Angelo?
But that's for sure. And it goes back again. It's rare to find people who are willing to change their mind on topics they refuse to put in the time and investigate. And that may be an advantage to the young person coming out of college, is that they may be, to some degree, it's debatable, trust me, an open slate, tech savvy, tech native, as opposed to set in the ways of mediocrity that a lot of people that may be older are. Maybe a combination of the two, acquiring the talents, capabilities, and experience coupled with youthful knowing how to ask questions to be anything is possible. These are all interesting subjects, of course, to me. When you're mentioning the Ford Model T, I'm thinking, you ask the horse and buggy owners, what's next? Faster horses, better wheels on the buggies. They don't know what they don't know. They're so stuck in their mind, in their industry, they're not thinking like Henry Ford did of what quote unquote is the next thing. So likely you're asking and aligning with the wrong people as well. No disrespect. Most people are somewhat useless relative to you getting information from them and getting better. It doesn't mean they're not good people. I'm being a little hard here. They might even be trying to misdirect you, but that's a little more evil. I'm just telling you how the world works. There's a reason why only so many people reach a pinnacle of what they do. It is rare. It is a top, whatever, 1, 2, 3%. But let me get off that high horse. Speaking of horses.
Well, listen, I'm reading Annie Duke's book, Quit.
Oh, yeah, she's great.
Yeah, quitting is an art. And one of the things that are remarkable, and I'm going to get the dates wrong probably, because between this last Super Bowl and the Super Bowl ads, and the Super Bowl ads from, was it 25 years ago or something? Most of the companies who had Super Bowl ads 25 years ago no longer exist.
Gone. Yeah.
Gone. Right? So it is sobering. I mean, I know the family offices are usually designed to operate to perpetuity, but there is no guarantee, right? There is a mistakes made, and just going to minimize the number of mistakes that one makes.
That is sure to happen. Companies that we're looking at now in the Mag 7, well, like Microsoft has been effectively in that kind of realm for decades. They're the only one. Things are going to change. There's going to be robotics, maybe the biggest industry ever. Now, Tesla, among the Mag 7 now, may have a little edge there. Bio technologies, longevity, things that are going to be rapidly evolving with the advent of greater AI. Everything is going to change. It's going to be a very different world, I think, in 10 years. This kind of relates to that a little bit, and back to family office technologies and really investment technologies. What's stopping large firms, speaking of Microsoft, of Google, from building AI-specific FO family office platforms?
So let's start by first take a look at Microsoft has 1.3 billion Windows users.
Wow.
They have 300 million active 365 users, so Word, Excel, and all that. And when you look at our industry, the general investment management industry, 500,000 to 1 million people work in it. So Microsoft, and so about 20 to 50,000 of those are estimated to be working in family offices. So Microsoft has to make decisions to have the 300 million Windows, 365 users to deliver something you can sell to them, or go develop something for the 50,000 investment officers in the world.
Yeah, where's the money?
So what they're going to bet is that when you go so high up and you look down, all people look the same. They all look a little, if you go high enough on a helicopter or plane, you see that everyone looks the same size. You can't tell the farmer from a banker, right, from that high up. So that's how they view it. We're going to deliver things that are useful for everyone. And that's why I don't think there's any hope for, and let's not even go Microsoft and Google. Let's just go even things like Box or Dropbox or these are, no one's going to come and look at our industry. We're an orphan industry effectively. And so what does that mean for family offices? They have to stop a little bit waiting for somebody to deliver, because that means you're going to rely on the largesse and the curiosity of those financial crises to let those technologists go, so they go build a technology for you. Or you can be a little bit more active in terms of finding a path to help you stay on the closer to, not at the cutting edge of technology, but at a place where, from a fiduciary perspective, you are serving the pool of money, right?
Indeed. What are key risks for not adapting AI-driven workflows?
Yeah, I think you talked about that a little bit, right? So on one side, let's say you have, it's not for family office, I'm doing in general investment offices, the whole group of people. When you talk to them, like I say, it looks shiny from the outside, and you start talking about, I start waving my arms, I talk about the vision of talking to your documents or talking to your portfolio kind of thing. And they're like, that's great, Ken, but we are fine. Okay, that's right. We are fine. Okay, great. Then
Yeah, that's
put
the
that
most common thing I hear as well.
right there. We're fine, right? Then you take that and now put it. So let's talk. Like, we'll make an example. So it's a $2 billion pool of money with 5 people serving. Okay. Put it compared to a $2 billion pool of money that's saved by 5 people, but they've really decided to take the lead on being more proactive for asset allocation. That means collecting what it is. The system goes and collects everything from everything there is, analyzes everything, reads your past decisions on asset allocation given comparison to the market, and gives you your asset allocation for 2026 should be the following, knowing current risk in the market, etc. In the context, it analyzes and gives you this. And now, as a CIO, you have to agree or disagree. It's up to you. You can tweak. You can still go to your consultants, and then ask them what they think, etc. That's for asset allocation. For portfolio construction, there are performance of current allocation versus in the past, given certain markets and the exposure of certain managers to certain type of market conditions and the negative effect it has on the performance, the system can turn around and say, we suggest some resizing of some of these managers. That's all by machine. You just go in there and you just run it. You run this agentic thing and it comes and gives you answers. For manager selection, one of the most important things, because in these things, for instance, sometimes when I write papers, I want your ChatGPT to review it for me, but it does some really nonsensical, very dry things. So what I did, I loaded all my past writings, and I said, make sure this new paper is in spirit similar to my past writings, right? So in the case of manager selection, you can do the same thing. All the managers that have been selected, all the documents you will collected from them can be the basis for a very quick no, which is just as important to saying yes to a manager. Saying a lot of quick no's saves you a lot of time. So getting to a quick no is a massive advantage. The other one is that if you make your manager selection in 10 days instead of 50 days, is there an edge? Is it so? We discussed this in this competition between events. You always want to be the first one. You may want to bring somebody else once your allocation is secured, but there's this whole concept that do that. Another note about manager selection. I don't know if you saw this or not, but Crunchbase ran its AI on 3,500 managers, right? And they have an incredible ability with 95 accuracy to say which manager has 95% chance of succeeding. That's 80 million the piece of data has gone. Granted, you have to have your single source of truth to be able to do that. But think of the impact that on manager selection. All you have to say, manager selection, this is the 10,000 managers I want to consider, and have the system dwindle it down to the 10 you should start looking at first. These are all give an edge on a $2 billion investment pool with 5 guys who use AI versus the one who doesn't have, and they're just fine. Okay.
Yes. I mean, since you brought it up, I was going to ask how AI is impacting private equity and venture capital. You brought up an interesting idea there relative to Crunchbase. I had a guest on, a European gentleman, Alex, who has a new platform that is looking at individual direct deals. You can really narrow it down, late stage, whatever stage, 3,500, look at secondaries, do all sorts of more AI native analytics. And again, I think this is a threat to some degree to the GP/LP industry. And rightfully so. A lot of them are just mediocre. I'm investing money, I'm tied up for a decade or longer, often getting mediocrity returns. This is not David Swenson of the 1990s. Awesome, by the way, a fun time. The world is different now for all the reasons that I said earlier. Now, you mentioned that about VC. Can I make the point, though, that maybe PE, private equity, is a little too fractured? You could get some resources, Stepstone, PitchBook, but that may be a little harder. Although, give me more time to think about it. That's going to be evolving as well.
So one of the assumptions we make is the need for a massive data set to train. Okay. Yes. I think one of the outcomes or conclusions of watching DeepSeek was that that may not be true. That you can actually use derived data to train your system. So instead of using 80 million pieces of data that crunch,
Yeah, much
you
less.
can use. The other part of it is that I still maintain that the single biggest source of useful information for an investment office is sitting in their shared drives. That they never extracted that information. They're going forward, and maybe for the last 2 years they have been, but there's 60 to 600,000 documents sitting in a shared drive that could be very relevant information in terms of past decisions, etc. And going back to your question in terms of the two investment offices that are, one is completely technologized and the other one is just we're fine. Risk management, we talked about. Alert engine, constantly awake, watching you. Portfolio monitoring, right? It's or board package is another pet peeve of mine. I've seen every board package I've seen that takes somewhere between. I have these rolling calls with my former clients or people I like, and they would listen to me, and I ask them, "So what are you trying to solve this time?" I'm trying to get that call on. I go, "This week we can't talk because our board meeting is in 5 weeks." And I'm like, 5 weeks is so long. So the board package process itself can be massively improved. But more importantly, every board package I've seen, say it's quarterly, at the back end has a 10-page table that has every investment line item by line item across probably 10 to 12 columns that goes 1, 3, 5, 10-year performance, Sharpe ratios, et cetera, et cetera. And they just give that to the board member. The board member without context is just basically looking at a sheet they have no understanding. Just because a manager returned negative 2% that quarter, that doesn't mean that it's bad. Because maybe the other managers or the cohorts were negative 3%. Maybe the benchmark was minus 5%. So that's a kind of intelligence that can be brought in onto the data once all of it is calculated. There's other impact. Again, another one of your podcasts talked about staff retention and hiring and training, work from home.
Ken, I'm glad someone's watching or viewing my podcast. You might be the only one that has seen multiple. Thank you, by the way.
I watched the last 5. So, but of course, memory being memory, I only remember the last 2 really well. But think of the impact it has on intern training. Right? If you want to intern, I say create a course together, and you mentioned that. Say put a course together that for somebody to be basically educated in finance coming out of, and I think that the investment offices have to adapt, and I see more and more actually pension endowment foundations starting to do that. Instead of having in-house dev teams, they have, or completely outsourcing, they find the smaller players who are much more malleable, more responsive, and more hungry, and they make a deal to create specific pieces of analytics that may be unique to them as part of the contract they sign. So I think that the answer is somewhere in between. Desktop was one of those things when, I don't know, I didn't see Steve Jobs speaking in his little turtleneck talk about the future. One of these will be on every desktop. I didn't see that live, but when you look at it, you see how prophetic it was. Same thing with the internet. When Netscape came out, I don't think I grasped the importance of what that meant. Okay, and those are the two that affect me every day. Maybe crypto is one of those. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to talk about crypto. I haven't delved into it. I'm scared of going it because it's going to suck a massive amount of trying to educate myself. I understand the basics, but so this AI feels at that next level up. Feels like the next thing that will change our lives in ways that we can't imagine coming up. I really do. I really think it's very important.
No, I mean, we can't imagine it because Einstein probably ballpark had about a 160 IQ. We're looking at in 2 or 3 years, possibly AI having an IQ that we can't even really fathom. Right now, I could argue aspects of Anthropic and others, debatably, maybe even 120, 125. Now, we could get a little bit deep into what is emotional intelligence, creativity, original thinking. Does it need to be prompted? All very fair. Even a definition of what is AGI is a little bit vague and unclear. But I am saying that things are rapidly changing. Even if my timelines are wrong, my directional trends are 100% correct. Everything is changing. And how do you, kind of a fun question, we indirectly covered aspects of it. What does a fully AI integrated investment office even look like?
So, dream of dreams. My vision would one day, CIO gets up in the morning, and while he's having his healthy breakfast and taking his longevity pills and coffee, he goes, well, there's an email, or he talks to his phone and says, what do I need to worry about today at the office? And the system basically starts pulling all relevant data. So your 9 o'clock is with hedge fund ABC, the portfolio manager is so and so. Oh, he was slapped by divorce papers 3 weeks ago. Performance is in line with the rest of the cohorts. There is there is rumors, or there's news, or even if you want to go that far, social media type of inclusion in these sources. I'm not saying everything should be integrated, but I'm thinking that there is need for judgment to see what is available and to decide how they should be available. So I think that the dream of dream is that a very cognitive interaction with your portfolio, and the 3 bullets about every one of your meetings, whether it's internal about HR, whether it is external about some event or what have you, or external with economists that, things you may want to talk to them about. Think about it. If I guess if I had the transcripts available, I would have fit all your 5 calls to your last 5 podcasts. And I asked him, well, tell me some of the stuff that's relevant to these things I want to talk about. I did it the old-fashioned way, right? So when I listen to them, because I enjoy listening to human interaction.
Yeah, there are platforms out there you could upload the YouTube feed, and within 30 seconds it gives you a 98, 99% accurate raw transcript. You could then take those transcripts and do what you said in one of the platforms, whether it's OpenAI or the others. True. But you went old school. You took the extra time and listened.
I mean, I do enjoy it. I really do. I mean, I do like to meditate, right? I don't think the AI can meditate for me, right? but I think that is if we let the investment offices do not resist change, it will get here faster. That's because it's coming either way. The tidal wave is just too strong not to affect, especially with this change of a younger generation of investment officers growing up in the investment industry and working for investment offices. I think that there will be a place that I just spoke to a retired CIO who just retired from a massive pension fund last year. And I was just trying to just, work with, just talk to me. And he was like, so when I got there, when I started going after this quantitative portfolio system implementation, I was telling all my staff, this is going to calculate exposures, show us exposures, actual allocations, information about a portfolio, and it's going to make me a cup of coffee if I needed to. He retired 8 years after that without seeing what he was promised. So I think if there is anything to be asked from family offices is to, and again, so I think that what happens with that type of CIOs who've been in the industry and they're trying and waiting for that big contribution to their lives in terms of easier decision making, they have been pushed back in their expectation because of technology hasn't delivered what they promised. And they finally settled on some sort of a percent of the original dream, which was, why can this be easier? Why can I get all my information when somebody says, City of New York mayor says, we're going to divest from oil and gas. Then all of a sudden you have $250 billion across 5 pension funds. Have to go figure out what exposure they have, and it takes them weeks to figure that out, right? All that will be addressed, but it has to be led by people. There are some people who are actually really good. Don Pierce from San Bernardino is a phenomenal thinker. Mark Steed from Arizona Public Service, Antonio Rodriguez from 32BJ Healthcare Fund. These and John Lewis from Williams College. These guys are great thinkers, and they are agreeing. They're starting to say, you know what? With AI, it looks like we can push the bar back up to where we originally started. That is, make life much more pleasant, decisions easier, and not to be super painful before you get to the numbers that help you with your decisions.
And Ken, we'll probably go a little round robin. We probably have about 5 minutes to do three questions. What trends in AI and blockchain governance should investment offices be watching?
Just go check out at compliance.ai. Somebody will apply that to family office and investment pools of money, because it is there 15 trillion on, at least on the pension endowment foundation side worldwide, and they all have these policies that are public and they can be improved based on. So I think that's going to be, and I haven't done a research, maybe I will do it, is on the governance side. I just spoke to a massive family office which had hundreds of employees, and they're all hands on deck busy with the governance, rewriting the governance piece. I think that when it comes to governance and compliance, those are given. Anything that you can, those are the easiest one to write in terms of a process or in terms of a question that you want answered, right? You say, take this stuff, compare it to the policy and say, if this allocation is within the policy, great. Otherwise, show me a red flag, right? So I think that especially things that are language related, I think will do very well with this whole new LLM stuff that are happening. I don't know of any companies actually trying to apply it specifically to the pension endowment foundation world or family offices.
What's the timeline for AI-driven investment platforms to go, let's go with the word mainstream?
3 to 5 years.
Okay.
3 to 5 years, and I can look at documents I produce for my clients in terms of the current state of the investment office when I got in, saying 2022, and what they're achieved in terms of things that are coming in. And don't get me wrong, vendors are trying to help. But going back to the very early subject we talked about, unless you are native AI provider, you cannot take full control of the kind of things that AI can do for you.
And I think lastly, kind of meld the two here a little bit. My friends in Greenwich in the alternative investments industry, what does the future hold for AI and effectively alternative investments?
So I think I view this as LLM's great. Here's 10 GP reports. They could reduce it to 10 paragraphs. Those are all very useful. I'm not saying anything bad about it. But the current vendors will have to write a lot of code. What I think I view it as, and based on all this recent conference I went to were like GP and then LP, there is a massive gap in information between these investment officers in an investment office and then their service provider GPs. I think that this AI can actually shrink that gap to a point. Like, I don't know if the GP guy is going to get mad at me, but when the hedge fund was coming out, they were like, all of a sudden, soft dollaring was a big issue, right? That's already, or hypothecation, what became an issue during a financial crisis. All these concepts will not exist because they won't, if they exist in any language, in any part of these documents, that knowledge gap will be shortened and therefore they become much more aware. It would be a lot more to the advantage of the investment offices. Now, for PEs, a whole new set of investment offices that are startups within 5 years going to become private equity candidates, right? You mentioned secondaries would be a lot easier to identify. If you want to say, or co-investments. You come up with an ideas that somebody has. You guys say, I want to put, 50 million, 20 million in one idea that's in your portfolio, but I want you to manage it as a separately managed account. I think those are all proliferate from this, from the exercise, from this. And look, doesn't all that sound fun, Angela? That the world is exciting, the kind of thing you can do in your personal lives, in your jobs, and all that. Um, More and more. I did a presentation to a conference in the last year where it was, role of AI in the investment office was pretty dry, and I changed it, and I gave me one of the side rooms, right? They don't give me the main stage where, Marky Mark goes, and then, had Hillary Clinton goes. I had one of the side rooms.
You should be having that main stage.
No, I wish. But so I changed the topic of my presentation as AI in, CIO out, question mark. Every CIO from the conference was in my little room was packed with all this. So I think it's an exciting times. I don't think CIOs will be replaced, because I think one place AI is very, very far from achieving is judgment. I think at the end of the day, it goes down to what judgment means. I mean, to my own kids, I say, listen, I want to help you improve your judgment. I'm not quite sure what it means or how I succeeded. I'm succeeding, but I'm trying really hard for all the young folks to say, stay AI curious and try to develop the concept of judgment.
Well, with me being a little bit of Dr. Doom, I don't disagree with you, Ken, although it's getting better by the second. And we'll see how it evolves to AGI, however that's defined. And one day, and not a gazillion years off, certainly super intelligence as well. But do humans have such great judgment? Does confirmation bias anchoring the ego from being smart and making good decisions in the past is no guarantee of moving forward? And I think what you said is very intriguing. I don't necessarily disagree. I just like to have, well, maybe I like to debate, but I like to have interesting back and forth discussions. I mean, everything.
Well, I give you one research I read was they did a survey of top 1,000 AI experts worldwide, and 5% believed it was the end of humanity as we know it. So yeah, there is fear, like you said, when nuclear arming of two countries to a tune, like unbelievable tune of enough nuclear weapons to destroy the world 5 times over kind of thing. I think there will be concept that there would be guardrails around this. There are entities that are trying to provide that guardrails or soundness around it. I am more excited than I am scared, but I must admit, like, it's a concept of something going sentient on you, right? It's
I mean, likely that's somewhat inevitable. But maybe it looks at us as being the way that we look at a fruit fly. It's like it's inconsequential. Let those humans go about their life. It just doesn't matter relative to us. We're soon to be not the most, let's go with the word species, not the most intelligent species on Earth. Maybe that's 1 year, maybe that's 5 years, but it's coming. Now, again, we could get into what is intelligence, creativity, emotional intelligence. It does get more nuanced. Is a robot AI going to be able to play baseball to dance? At the moment, not so good. 10, 20 years, yeah, it's actually going to be so good. Maybe it's not a sport anymore. It's not a competition when it's too easy. Just so many more questions, I guess you could say, than answers. Here's one thing I will say, in my experience traveling the world and knowing super rich people, why would they want the world to change? If I'm worth 300 million, a billion, 10 billion, 100 billion, the world has been pretty good for me with my asymmetrical edge that I may have. And there may be a variety of factors in that. I don't want change that may level the playing field, that may take resources, scarce resources out of my family, quote unquote. These are all fascinating and challenging societal questions that, again, we have more questions than we have answers for. And I know some of you audience think that I browbeat this too much, and you're probably right. But in the family office world, having been in it for decades, there's just not enough of these discussions. I'm not saying that the people that also service the community don't have the intelligence. Many of them are smarter than me. But what skills are you acquiring? What guts do you have to take a stand, to put in the work, and to come up with opinions that may need to change as new information comes in, just like playing poker? I said it a million times. This industry is so boring, so vanilla. Everyone is so careful. Everyone is politically correct. Like, I basically just don't give a rat's ass about that. I did 5 or 10 years ago. I had a board and advisors to answer to. Now I don't. Again, I don't care about being liked. I care about being respected for the depth of my opinions and hopefully causing you, audience, to think for yourself. Again, I could care less. And according to my own family, I'm not particularly well liked. So like that, that ship has sailed for me. I'm not saying that, we all don't want some love and all that. It's all good. But I enjoy these challenging discussions, both for my members that get proprietary knowledge, proprietary conversations, connections, and the events. Like you said, I have a significant program. Most of it really is closed, coming up in Palm Beach. And by the way, we are all set. I got more than enough. I'm turning down families that are billion-dollar families because I promised a little bit more of a quasi-intimate environment. Now, you join, you become a part of my SFO continuity, my private club, then you get it. And some of you have said, Angelo, you don't always go into great detail. Well, I go into a hell of a lot more detail publicly than anyone else I know in the community. And by the way, my members, my committed consulting and other relationships, they pay me to get at least, I'm not going to say the answers because I'm wrong a lot, but that really more deep, intellectual, more one-on-one conversation, sometimes 3 hours on the phone. I give that to them. There needs to be something where they're getting that broadly I'm not giving, quote unquote, to the public. I would say with my members, like, you don't use me enough. Use me more. I think I'm pretty good. If I'm not in anything, I know so many people that might even have a varying perspective than mine. And people like Ken, people that others that he mentioned that I've had on my program in the last 5 or 6 weeks, Ken's going to give his information or reach out to him in a second. But I could assure for my members, you get a personal intro. I guarantee he's going to get back to you, or I'll call him up and make sure that he does. There is a value in going to angelorobles.com, becoming a member, committing, and being a part of something that is special that I just don't see in other parts of the community. Who cares whether I'm likable or not? None of that matters. Are you getting one incredible idea, hopefully 10, 20, or 30, one incredible idea throughout the year that you decide to do research and take action on, and it makes a huge impact? And I know the audience hates when I do this. They feel I'm arrogant from this perspective. I don't mean to be. I've been humbled more times in my life than I would like to admit. And I'm sure I'm going to be humbled yet again, as always, moving forward. But Ken, on that note, I'm going to give the final commentary, whether it's commenting on my commentary, some of the subjects we covered today. And then eventually, in case you forget, I will ask how families can reach out to you.
Listen, this is a kind of dialogue that's necessary. It's all about efficient transfer of information to an audience and to sort of understand, to get from being in a large room, dark room, to be in a smaller room with a little bit more light, or have more light to be able to see a little further. I would say that stay AI curious. Don't shut down on it. Read about it, talk about it, ask questions. In fact, Andrew, I think the single biggest thing I've seen right now is to be able to find a super set of questions that needs to be answered. I think that's a great place to start. Maybe you and I should run a little survey. Brothers, everybody ask people, what are the questions you want to answer? I would just collect them, because that is invaluable when it comes from a perspective of being able to solve right problems. You have to understand what the problems are, what the right questions are, so you can answer them. Other than that, I enjoyed this. Thank you so much, Angelo. This was fantastic. I feel like I should have something deeper to say, but I don't. So
No, I went on my rant there. It's a little hard to after that. You did an incredible job. It was David Tetton who introduced us really only earlier in the year, really, ballpark, but like literally about 2 months ago. So glad we saw each other for the first time in Miami. Not a bad place to be in the winter here in the Northeast. So that's all good. And for those of you that are members that are a part of what I'm doing, know that I'm hosting something special the week of March 24th in Palm Beach. Ken is simply a special invited guest. Doesn't mean that he's not a partner or a sponsor. He's just someone that I think my members would get value from. Okay, so he's not a family office. He's detracting from the ratio. My ratio is hell of good already, better than all the other conferences out there. I would rather have a couple of incredible people. I got like the leader that I met in quantum computing. I got so
no,
many incredible people, Jordy Fisher and others that some of you heard on my program. And Ken, although he may not necessarily have a speaking role, is going to be there. You can meet with him. I can make introductions. This is all going to be incredibly valuable. Now, again, I am all set unless you go to angelorobles.com and join, because members always get that access. I always have room for them, and that's something special that they get. And meeting and interacting with Ken absolutely is going to be very valuable. And by the way, Ken's last name, I'm going to spell it Akoundi, and his company, and he's got multiple, he's quite the entrepreneur, Cordatius. And Ken, for those that would like to follow you, whether it's X or LinkedIn, learn more about your website, reach out to you, how could they do so?
I think the easiest way is we do regular publication on the website, cordatiusllc.com, but also on LinkedIn. I do post shorter, thought-provoking ideas onto the LinkedIn page. So either one of those work.
Excellent. I highly recommend following and reaching out to Ken. Again, he's really way more in the institutional investment business. So he's not really been that exposed to that many single family offices. You're going to have an edge as a family office, maybe even a multifamily office, reaching out to him, learning the value that he provides. Of course, after an initial convo, for a fee, he deserves to be, a capitalist running a business. And again, if you reach out to me specifically as a member, I'll make a personal, direct intro, and I even hold Ken a little bit accountable for follow-up and quality of the work that he does for you. I want to go above board more than I need to do, because I actually don't get used enough from my members and provide value. And the right connection, especially that others are not as familiar with, could be worth its weight in gold. So Ken, I really appreciate you. I look forward to interacting with you and my members in a couple of more weeks in Palm Beach. It's been a pleasure to have you on, and I look forward to a couple of visits like this a year, because when we do this again in 6 months, we know so much is going to change. We're going to hear so much more about quantum, about AI agents and practicality. There's just so much going on, and what you're building is going to be further along. I'm really excited. Can't wait to see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you for having me again. A blast. Please don't be a stranger. Call, ask questions. The dialogue is part of what I cherish. And what I know is available, and I'm always happy to be challenged and have a deeper dialogue about things that people disagree with me. I'm like Angelo when it comes to that. I'm not claiming I'm right all the time, and I always revise my views, but I will put a stiff resistance in terms of knowledge base.
Love it. Ken Akoundi, everyone. Thank you all so much, and a special thanks to you, Ken. Great guest. Look forward to seeing you in Palm Beach. Thank you.
And I appreciate you. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you.